The wind howled through the dense forest of the Pacific Northwest, whipping branches against the darkened sky. Dr. Ethan Holloway pulled his weathered jacket tighter, his keen veterinary eyes scanning the rugged terrain. Something was different tonight, an electric tension hung in the air that made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. Ranger Station 17 had been his home for the past 3 years, a self-imposed exile after a controversial research project had forced him out of academic circles. Here, among the towering pines and misty valleys, Ethan found solace in studying the intricate ecosystems that most people overlooked. A sudden movement caught his attention. Something was lying motionless near a cluster of moss-covered rocks, something that definitely did not belong in these woods. Ethan approached cautiously, his medical training overriding the initial surge of apprehension. As he drew closer, he realized this was no ordinary creature. 6 limbs, iridescent fur that seemed to shimmer and change color with each breath, and a body structure that defied every biological classification he had ever studied. The being was clearly injured, a deep wound seeping in luminescent blue fluid that pulsed with an almost rhythmic quality. "Easy now," Ethan whispered, his voice instinctively soft and calming, a technique he'd perfected during years of treating wild and often terrified animals. The creature's golden, pupilless eyes locked onto him with an intelligence that was both alien and somehow familiar. The wind picked up, carrying with it a faint, metallic scent that Ethan couldn't quite place. Something was approaching, something that didn't feel entirely natural. His hand unconsciously moved to the emergency radio clipped to his belt, but something in the creature's gaze made him hesitate. Miles away, in a sleek spacecraft hovering just beyond Earth's atmospheric detection, a figure watched the scene unfold. Commander Vri of the Galactic Diplomatic Corps leaned forward, mandibles clicking with a mixture of concern and anticipation. The transmission had been clear, their most valuable research specimen had crash-landed on this primitive planet. "Locate the subject," a cold, imperious voice commanded through the communication system. The Baroness's instructions were always precise, always non-negotiable. Back in the forest, Ethan knelt beside the wounded creature. Years of veterinary experience told him this being was dying, yet something about its physiology suggested capabilities far beyond any terrestrial life form. The blue fluid continued to pulse, almost like a heartbeat, or multiple heartbeats. "I'm going to help you," Ethan murmured, reaching into his emergency medical kit. Whatever this creature was, it was clear it needed immediate assistance. The forest seemed to grow quiet, as if holding its breath in anticipation of what would come next. Little did Ethan know that his simple act of compassion would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything humanity understood about their place in the universe. The creature's arrival was no accident, and the forces converging around this moment were far more complex than a simple rescue. A distant rumble of thunder echoed through the trees, a promise of the storm yet to come. The first rays of dawn crept through the cabin's windows, casting long shadows across the makeshift medical area Ethan had set up in his ranger station. The alien creature, which Ethan had begun to think of as Lumina, lay stabilized on a reinforced examination table, its iridescent fur now a soft amber color that seemed to pulse with an internal rhythm. Ethan worked meticulously, his scientific mind racing with questions. The creature's biological structure defied every known principle of terrestrial life. 2 distinct heartbeats, a circulatory system that used a copper-based fluid instead of iron, and a healing capacity that could only be described as miraculous. Each discovery peeled back another layer of mystery. Outside, the forest remained unnaturally quiet. No birds chirped, no woodland creatures stirred. It was as if the entire ecosystem held its breath, waiting. Lumina's golden eyes tracked Ethan's movements with an intelligence that went beyond mere animal awareness. When he approached with a specialized scanning device, cobbled together from various research equipment he'd collected over the years, the creature made no attempt to resist. "What are you?" Ethan muttered, more to himself than to Lumina. The scanner revealed complex bioorganic structures that seemed to shift and reorganize themselves in real time. Adaptive cellular matrices that could potentially heal from almost any injury, a neural network that suggested advanced cognitive capabilities far beyond human comprehension. A soft beeping from his communication equipment interrupted his thoughts. An encrypted signal, something he hadn't seen since his days in advanced xenobiology research. Ethan hesitated, then activated the receiver. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a partial transmission. Fragmented images of a sleek spacecraft, glimpses of unfamiliar technology, and a brief audio snippet that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. Specimen Alpha 7 must be recovered. Planetary quarantine protocols activated. Lumina's fur suddenly shifted to a deep, vibrant blue. The change was instantaneous, synchronized with the transmission's final words. Ethan realized the creature was responding to something beyond his understanding. A low rumble outside grew louder. Not thunder, not an approaching vehicle. Something else entirely. Rusty, Ethan's old German shepherd, began to growl, a sound deep in his throat that spoke of primordial fear. The dog had been Ethan's constant companion since leaving his previous research position, and he had never heard him sound so threatened. "Easy, boy," Ethan said softly, though his own hand was now inches from the emergency communication device. Lumina's 6 limbs began to move, not in a defensive posture, but in what seemed like a deliberate pattern. Ethan recognized it as a form of communication, or perhaps a warning. The transmission repeated, this time with additional context that made Ethan's scientific mind reel. Mentions of diplomatic intervention, genetic research, and a term that translated roughly to cosmic preservation protocol. Outside, the first signs of an approach became visible. A shimmer in the air, like heat rising from desert sand, but this was the dense forest of the Pacific Northwest. Something was coming, something that didn't follow the natural laws of terrestrial physics. Ethan looked at Lumina, then back at the transmission. Whatever was happening was far bigger than a simple rescue. This was the beginning of something that would challenge everything humanity understood about their place in the universe. The creature's fur now cycled through a rapid sequence of colors, a language, a warning, or perhaps a countdown. Ethan Holloway, once a respected xenobiologist now living in self-imposed exile, realized his quiet life was about to change forever. First contact was no longer a theoretical concept. It was happening right here, right now, in this small ranger station at the edge of the wilderness. The communication center at the Global Aerospace Defense Agency buzzed with unprecedented activity. Director Helena Reyes stood motionless, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic displays that mapped increasingly strange atmospheric disturbances across the Pacific Northwest. "Talk to me," she demanded, her voice cutting through the controlled chaos of the monitoring room. Major William Garrett approached, a digital tablet clutched in his hand. Unexplained energy signatures. Multiple quantum fluctuations. Something's out there, and it's not following any known physical laws. Helena knew this was more than a routine investigation. Her background in astrophysics and decades of classified research had prepared her for extraordinary scenarios, but this felt different. The data streaming across the screen suggested a presence that was deliberately avoiding complete detection, a technological dance of near-impossible precision. Back at the ranger station, Ethan Holloway was experiencing the full weight of the unfolding mystery. Lumina, the alien creature, had begun to communicate through a series of complex color changes and subtle movements that defied simple interpretation. What had started as a medical rescue was rapidly transforming into something far more significant. A sudden surge of energy caused the cabin's electronics to flicker. Rusty, the old German shepherd, began to whimper, pressing close to Ethan as if seeking protection from something unseen. "Easy, boy," Ethan muttered, but his own hand trembled slightly as he reached for the emergency communication device. The transmission from earlier continued to puzzle him. Fragments of an advanced language, references to cosmic preservation and genetic recalibration danced at the edges of his comprehension. Lumina watched him intently, those golden eyes holding a wisdom that seemed to transcend human understanding. Miles above the Earth, the galactic diplomatic vessel maintained its careful position. Commander Vri reviewed the latest reports, mandibles clicking with a mixture of frustration and calculated precision. The Baroness would not be pleased with the current situation. Specimen Alpha 7 must be recovered with minimal planetary contamination, the ship's AI repeated, its voice a perfect blend of urgency and detachment. Back on the ground, Helena Reyes made a decision that would change everything. Activate Protocol Omega, she commanded, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what was about to unfold. Specialized teams began to mobilize. Advanced reconnaissance units, xenobiological response teams, and a select group of scientists who had been waiting for this moment their entire careers. First contact was no longer a theoretical concept, it was happening now. Ethan felt it first, a subtle change in the atmosphere. The air seemed to vibrate with an energy that was both alien and somehow familiar. Lumina's fur began to cycle through a complex pattern of colors, each shift seemingly a response to something beyond human perception. A low humming began, so subtle at first that Ethan wasn't sure if he was hearing it or feeling it. Rusty's ears perked up, his old body suddenly alert and tense. Something was coming. The forest outside the ranger station grew unnaturally quiet. No wind rustled the leaves, no distant bird calls broke the silence. It was as if the entire ecosystem was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. Ethan looked at Lumina, then back at the communication equipment. Whatever was happening was far bigger than a simple rescue. This was a moment that would redefine humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The first sign of approach was a shimmer in the air, like heat rising from desert sand, but this was the dense forest of the Pacific Northwest. Something was coming. Something that didn't follow the natural laws of terrestrial physics. First contact was no longer a theoretical concept. It was happening right here, right now. The quantum displacement field materialized with a precision that defied conventional physics. One moment, the dense forest surrounding Ethan's ranger station was undisturbed, the next, a sleek, obsidian-like vessel seemed to bloom into existence, its surface rippling with fractal patterns that hurt the eyes if observed too closely. Baroness Zilla Voren was not a being accustomed to waiting or compromise. Her arrival was as calculated as it was dramatic. 3.5 meters tall, with a biomechanical exoskeleton that shifted and breathed like living metal, she represented the pinnacle of galactic diplomatic corps engineering. Activate retrieval protocols, she commanded, her voice a melodic blend of harmonic frequencies that translated simultaneously across multiple communication spectrums. Inside the ranger station, Ethan felt the change before he saw it. Lumina's entire body began to pulse with an intense golden light, each of its 6 limbs moving in a complex geometric pattern that seemed both a warning and a form of communication. Helena Reyes, monitoring from the Global Aerospace Defense Agency, watched in a mixture of horror and fascination. "We've never seen anything like this," she muttered to Major Garrett. The holographic displays showed multiple quantum signatures, energy readings that defied every known law of terrestrial physics. The forest itself seemed to react. Trees bent slightly, not from wind, but from the quantum displacement field surrounding the Baroness's arrival. Rusty, Ethan's faithful dog, pressed himself into the corner of the cabin, whimpering with an intensity that spoke of primordial fear. "Stay calm," Ethan whispered to Lumina, though he knew the words were more for his own benefit than the alien creature's. His hand hovered near the emergency communication device, fully aware that whatever was about to happen was far beyond any protocol he'd ever learned. Baroness Zilla's first step onto terrestrial ground sent ripples through the quantum field. Each movement was calculated, precise, a living weapon of diplomatic intervention. Her sensors immediately locked onto Lumina's unique quantum signature. "Specimen Alpha 7, she spoke, her words cutting through the air like a quantum blade, "your retrieval is now mandatory." Ethan stepped forward, a lifetime of scientific training and pure human stubbornness rising to the surface. "You're not taking anything," he declared, surprised by the steadiness of his own voice. A low, impossible sound began to build. Not a sound one heard, precisely, but felt. A vibration that resonated at the quantum level, causing the very molecules in the air to tremble. Lumina's response was immediate. The creature's fur shifted through impossible color sequences, a language more complex than any human communication system had ever conceived. Each color change was a message, a warning, a declaration of something far more profound than simple resistance. The Baroness paused. For the first time in her extensive diplomatic career, something was not proceeding according to predetermined protocols. Helena Reyes watched the quantum signatures spike on her displays. "This is not a standard retrieval," she muttered to her team. "This is something else entirely." The moment stretched, a point of cosmic tension where multiple realities seemed to hover in delicate balance. Ethan, Lumina, the Baroness, the unseen teams monitoring from above and below, all suspended in a heartbeat of infinite possibility. Something was about to change. Fundamentally. Irrevocably. And no one, not human, not alien, could predict exactly what would happen next. The quantum field stabilized, but the tension remained electric. Baroness Zilla's biomechanical form seemed to pulse with an inner light, her sensors analyzing every microscopic detail of the environment. "You misunderstand the complexity of this retrieval," she stated, her voice a harmonic blend that seemed to bypass human ears and resonate directly within the mind. "Specimen Alpha 7 is not a simple acquisition. It is a key to preventing a cosmic catastrophe." Ethan stood his ground, Rusty pressed protectively against his leg. "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied, "but I'm not letting you take this creature." Helena Reyes, monitoring from the Global Aerospace Defense Agency, activated a secure quantum communication channel. The technology was experimental, barely understood, a desperate attempt to establish direct communication with the alien presence. "Explain the nature of your intervention," she demanded, her voice steady despite the unprecedented nature of the moment. The Baroness shifted, her exoskeleton realigning in a way that suggested both threat and potential cooperation. "Your planet stands at a critical juncture. Specimen Alpha 7 carries genetic information crucial to preventing a multidimensional collapse that would destroy not just your world, but multiple quantum realities." Lumina's fur began to cycle through a complex pattern of colors. Ethan realized it was communicating, translating the Baroness's words, offering context that went beyond simple linguistic translation. "The creature is trying to tell us something," Ethan said, his scientific curiosity overtaking his initial fear. "It's not just a specimen. It's a messenger." Major Garrett's voice crackled through the communication system. "Director, we're detecting massive quantum fluctuations. Whatever is happening, it's bigger than a simple retrieval mission." Inside the ranger station, the air itself seemed to become malleable. Quantum threads of possibility danced around Lumina, creating impossible geometric patterns that hurt the eyes if observed too directly. The Baroness extended a biomechanical appendage, not as a weapon, but as a form of communication. "Your species is on the brink," she explained. "The genetic information carried by this specimen is a bridge. A solution to a problem your scientists haven't even conceived of yet." Ethan noticed something extraordinary. Lumina was no longer cowering or defensive. The creature was actively engaging, its color changes becoming more deliberate, more communicative. Helena's team worked frantically, trying to translate the quantum communication. Fragments of understanding began to emerge, references to genetic drift, dimensional stability, a cosmic ecosystem far more complex than humanity had ever imagined. "We're talking about more than just your planet," the Baroness continued. "We're talking about maintaining the structural integrity of reality itself." Rusty whimpered, sensing the weight of the moment. Ethan placed a hand on the dog's head, his mind racing. Everything he knew about biology, about the nature of life itself, was being challenged in this single, impossible moment. Lumina moved for the first time since the injury, extending one of its 6 limbs. A holographic projection erupted from its body, a three-dimensional map of quantum interactions that showed the intricate connections between seemingly unrelated events. "My God," Ethan whispered. "It's showing us the web of existence." The projection revealed planetary ecosystems, quantum entanglements, genetic pathways that stretched across multiple dimensions. Humanity was not just a single species on a single planet, it was a critical node in a cosmic network more complex than anyone had ever imagined. The Baroness waited. Not with impatience, but with a calculated precision that suggested multiple potential outcomes were being simultaneously evaluated. "We require your cooperation," she stated. "Not your submission." Outside, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The quantum field shimmered, reality itself becoming fluid, malleable. First contact was no longer about invasion or discovery. It was about survival, of a scale that transcended human comprehension. The moment stretched between possibility and inevitability. Quantum threads of potential futures danced around Ethan, the Baroness, and Lumina, a cosmic ballet of unprecedented complexity. "You must understand," the Baroness explained, her biomechanical form subtly shifting, "humanity is not just an observer. You are a critical component of a multidimensional ecosystem that maintains the structural integrity of reality itself." Lumina's fur rippled with a sequence of colors that seemed to translate the intricate message. The holographic projection continued to expand, revealing connections that defied human comprehension, genetic pathways, quantum entanglements, and ecological networks that spanned dimensions. Helena Reyes watched from the Global Aerospace Defense Agency, her team working frantically to process the unprecedented data. "We're looking at something beyond scientific classification," she muttered. "This is a fundamental rewriting of our understanding of existence." Ethan stepped forward, his veterinary training and scientific curiosity overcoming his initial fear. "What exactly are we talking about?" he asked, his voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. The Baroness's response was both precise and profound. "Your planet is a nexus point, a critical junction in a cosmic genetic network that maintains dimensional stability. The specimen you've been protecting carries genetic information that can prevent a multidimensional cascade event." Rusty, the old German shepherd, whimpered softly, sensing the weight of the moment. The forest outside seemed to hold its breath, the very fabric of reality feeling malleable, uncertain. Lumina moved for the first time since the initial encounter. One of its 6 limbs extended, touching Ethan's hand. In that moment, a flood of information passed between them, not in words, but in a visceral understanding that transcended language. "The genetic markers," Ethan whispered, his mind reeling, "they're not just a scientific curiosity. They're a key. A bridge between realities." The Baroness nodded, her biomechanical form pulsing with an inner light. "Precisely. Humanity stands at a crucial point of evolution, not just biological, but cosmic. Your species has the potential to be guardians, not just of your own world, but of the intricate web of existence." Outside, the quantum field began to stabilize. The impossible geometric patterns of energy started to resolve, like a complex equation finding its solution. Helena's team continued to process the data. "We're detecting stabilization across multiple quantum signatures," Major Garrett reported. "It's like the universe is recalibrating." Lumina's fur cycled through a final, intricate pattern of colors. A message, a farewell, a promise of future connection. "What happens now?" Ethan asked, looking at the Baroness. "Now," she responded, "you begin to understand. Your role is not to fear the unknown, but to explore it. To protect. To connect." The biomechanical form of the Baroness began to shimmer, preparing for departure. But something had fundamentally changed. This was no longer a simple retrieval mission. This was a first step toward a larger understanding. Lumina looked at Ethan one last time. Those golden, Pupilless eyes held a wisdom that spoke of journeys across unimaginable distances, of a cosmic understanding that humanity was only beginning to glimpse. As the quantum displacement field began to activate, Ethan realized that everything had changed. Not just for him, not just for humanity, but for the very fabric of reality itself. First contact was never about invasion or conquest. It was about connection. Understanding. Evolution. The forest returned to its natural state. Rusty stretched, seemingly unperturbed by the extraordinary events. But Ethan knew nothing would ever be the same. Humanity's true journey was just beginning.